Let's talk about the domain of a function. The domain of a function is all of the values that x can be equal to. So we're strictly looking at the x values. The range, which we're not going to really talk about in this video, but the range is all the values that y can be equal to. So let's look at how we would actually find the domain of a function. So to find the domain of a function that is given algebraically, you need to find the restrictions of the function. Now we're going to look at two types of restrictions. The first type of restriction is that the denominator of a function cannot be 0. The second type of restriction is that the inside of a square root must not be negative, meaning that the inside of the square root must be greater than or equal to 0. Now, if neither one of these restrictions exist within the function that you are given, so if you don't have a rational function or a square root function, then the domain will be all real numbers. Let's find the domain of these functions. The first one says f of x equals 6x cubed minus 7x squared plus 3x plus 7. So remember, as long as our function does not have a rational part or a square root, then the domain of my function is all real numbers. All right, let's look at the second question. It says g of x equals 10x minus 7 over x plus 3. So this is a rational function, which means there's a variable in our denominator. Our denominator, x plus 3, cannot equal 0. It is never okay to have 0 in the denominator. So if we were to go and solve this, then we get x cannot be negative 3. So the domain of this function is all real numbers except for x cannot be negative 3. Now there's a couple ways to write that domain. This is set builder notation. The other way would be an interval notation, which means you can be from negative infinity to negative 3, union negative 3 to infinity. That is just an interval notation way to include every number except for negative 3. All right, the last problem, h of x equals the square root of x minus 4. So this is a square root, so the inside of the square root, in order to find the domain, must be greater than or equal to 0. So x must be greater than or equal to 4. Now if we were to write this in interval notation, it means that x can start at 4, but it has to be everything greater than 4. So it's going to be 4 to infinity, including 4. So that is how we would find the domain of 3 different types of problems you would see.